This morning on Instagram, I heard something really thought-provoking, and it was this young African guy. Time to time, he comes across my timeline. He does stuff in like fitness and modeling and whatever. And he's young. He's a young African guy, and he said, in general, it's hard for Africans to travel throughout the continent, and is not as free as one would think. And then he made a juxtaposition to Europeans maybe creating that situation, but for them, it's so free for them to move around their own continent. And I felt like, oh, wow, this is something I can sink my teeth into. I can give people more context of the situation because maybe they never thought about it. And I'll also say he mentioned that it's funny how there's not even direct connection or bridge between Africa to the Caribbean. There's no direct flight. So it's a way to even separate the diaspora. But think about that. Even if you just think about West Africa, for example, you would think that those West African countries where a lot of our people came from will have flights to the Caribbean where a lot of our people live today. There's no bridge in between. So that's that. So let me dig into it a little more. Now, here's the thing. Back in 1884 and 85, there was something called the Berlin Conference. And if you don't know what Berlin is a major city in Germany. But I know you heard of the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall is what separated East and West Germany, and you heard of the fall of the Berlin Wall. So we're talking about the same city. So at the Berlin Conference, it was a group of European nations that sat together for the purpose of carving up Africa for themselves. So the biggest perpetrators were the UK and France. This is why they colonized more than 50% between those two of the nations in Africa. Those two. And then you have Italy that colonized like 4 countries. You had Portugal that colonized about 4. You had Germany, same thing. And Spain colonized 2. And so they all met up to figure out, okay, who's taking what. And their purpose was to have, a military installation. It was to extract resources, mainly, for themselves, to enrich themselves. And that was that. Now, while trying to cut a place that doesn't belong to them up, they did it irregardless to people's race, people's tribe, people's religion, anything that bonds people together. They didn't, that wasn't in mind when it was time to cut up. Which is why I believe in a lot of cases when, throughout history we hear like so many different civil wars in Africa, it's not technically always the same people. So we got them after the carving. It created these countries. So you might have it where, like, let's just take Nigeria, for example, and I'm just going to use it because it's the most populated country in all of Africa. And so in Africa, let's say you hear like this infight going on. You might think, why not these Nigerians fighting each other, which is a dumb thing to say, but you might say that. But in reality is, one of those groups might be more related or be the same people of some people in the neighboring nation, because when it was cut, nothing else was taken into consideration. Just this land area was into consideration. So that's why you have these civil wars, because they fight against other people that's not their people. So just think about that in the future. When you hear about civil wars in Africa, a lot of times it's different people that they're fighting with. They might be more related to somebody across the border. Anyway, I digress. So you had this conference, and that was the result of it. On the opposite side, what the Europeans did for themselves, after World War II, they said, all right, we need to create something where we have more stability in Europe and the threat of war is not always present. We need to be interdependent. So that's why they created the EU, the European Union. And what that did was, like I said, once they're working together and they get money together, that does create stability, because you won't provoke the other side if you guys need each other. Maybe you're buying energy from your partner or this country, or you getting food or whatever. So you're getting different benefits from working together. So let's not mess this up. It's essentially what the EU was. So now with the EU, some of the perks is people get to flow in and out of different countries without stopping at a border. It's amazing. I actually done it several times, going from on bus country to country, and you just keep going through, just like we do here in the States. I went from France. There was this one particular trip. This is my first time doing it. I went from France to Belgium to Amsterdam on bus. And yeah, you just ride through without no visa, without passport. The bus just keeps going. Essentially what we do here in the States. But in Africa, all these different nations, they need passports, they need visas in some cases. It makes it very hard for them. And when you keep people separate, it stops people from working together and sharing resources or whatnot. And this was all created by powers that left them in the situation was. All right, so that's what it was. Now, if we bring it back to me, it's the reason why I only been to one African country, which was Egypt, like 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years now. But I've been to most of Europe, because my strategy was always, all right, let me knock out all the easy places. I'll save the hard places for later. And that's what happened. So I hope in the future they make it easier for people to just do like the European Union does. And also that would tamper down on, because if you could drive from place to place, it will stop problems at the border where there's a lot of corruption. People charge you a lot of money to pass, or stalling you out so you can pay more. It'll just tamper that down. And then they could focus on, okay, let's fix the infrastructure to make it easier for buses and things to go by, and for people and commerce to flow. So let me know what you guys think down below. Thanks for watching. Peace.